Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. We've got news tonight on the recent developments in the Russian investigation, as well as Steve Bannon's remarks about the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. But first, just a word on Hurricane Irma. It has left a trail of destruction across much of the state of Florida, as we know, triggering severe flooding now in Jacksonville, Florida, the state's largest city. More than 7 million homes and businesses are without power tonight across the southeast. And officials are going house to house now in the Florida Keys, which took the brunt of the hit as the storm first made landfall. Here's what it looked like here on MSNBC when the big storm moved through.
This is the rain that's, wow, hitting me. Wow.
Okay, Gabe, why don't you get under the overhang?
This came off one of the palm trees to the east of me, and I'm not going to let go of it because it actually could just fly around. It probably weighs about 25, 30 pounds.
The angle of approach can make all the difference, and a storm that's more parallel. Oh. That hurt.
That hurts. We'll get the latest on Irma, now a tropical storm ahead on hardball. But now to the Russian investigation into what former White House strategist Steve Bannon is now saying. Just weeks after he was ousted, Bannon is reigniting the debate over President Trump's firing of former FBI Director James Comey, a subject the White House has tried to avoid amid the obstruction of justice investigation into the president. Bannon said on 60 Minutes that Trump's decision to cut Comey loose was the biggest mistake in modern political history. Let's listen.
I don't think there's any doubt that if James Comey had not been fired, we would not have a special counsel.
Someone said to me that you described the firing of James Comey, you're a student of history, as the biggest mistake in political history.
That would probably be too bombastic even for me, but maybe modern political history.
So the firing of James Comey was the biggest mistake in modern political history.
If you're saying that that's associated with me, then I'll leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that. Anyway, the remark reignited the debate over Comey's ouster and forced the White House to once again defend the president's decision to fire him. In the briefing today, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders accused Comey, there they go again, of making false testimony, among other things. Let's watch.
Do you have a reaction to Steve Bannon's comments on 60 Minutes, saying that the firing of James Comey was the biggest political mistake in modern history?
Certainly, I think that has been shown in the days that followed that the president was right in firing Director Comey. Since Director's firing, we've learned new information about his conduct that only provided further justification for that firing, including giving false testimony, leaking privileged information to journalists. He went outside of the chain of command and politicized an investigation into a presidential candidate.
Perfect flackery. Anyway, meanwhile, following reports that Robert Mueller's team of investigators want to talk to multiple current and former White House aides, some are now lawyering up, as you might expect, including interim communications director Hope Hicks. They're all hiring lawyers. White House counsel Don McGahn, a lawyer himself, and former chief of staff Reince Priebus. They're all getting ready for their testimony. Joining me right now is Michael Isikoff, chief investigative correspondent at Yahoo News, and Annie Linsky, and chief national correspondent at the Boston Globe, and Paul Butler's a former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst. Paul, you know, I listened to the flackery, and that's what it is from her, from Huckabee. She's the perfect part for this, you know, a little country, a little, you know, sincerity. But basically, she was reading from a list of flackery notes. Everybody knows he fired him. He fired Comey because Comey was getting too close on the Russian investigation. Now we have this guy ripping the scab off, and not in an indelicate way of saying they're back to where they don't want to be, defending the firing of Comey, which was done to prevent any further progress on the Russian investigation. And everyone watching now knows the motive.
Right.
Now they are back to the BS again.
That's right. So ironic, because there actually were credible reasons to fire Comey, all of those unsupported allegations he made against Hillary Clinton. But that's not why Comey was fired. And so now we have this spectacle. You know, when he says that it's the biggest blunder in political history, he's got insider knowledge. So that makes me think, is this a bigger blunder than Bill Clinton allegedly lying about whether he had sex with Monica Lewinsky? Because Clinton got impeached for that. He wasn't convicted in the Senate, but Bannon's implying this could go even further.
Well, Andy, I find it interesting because there's a catch-22 buried in this. You know, if Trump is guilty as hell and knows it, firing Comey makes sort of instinctive sense. One guy knock him down, now knock the next guy down. Just keep knocking him down.
True.
And this sort of assumes that what Bannon and his weird strategizing is saying is, oh, he's clean as a whistle. Why did he fire Comey? Well, he's not. I don't think anybody out there thinks he's clean as a whistle. So Bannon is flacking in his way for the guy.
I think that Bannon is seeing sort of the knock-on effect as the biggest mistake in modern political history. I mean, I think he's seeing the hiring of Mueller as an existential threat to the White House and to the presidency.
When is Steve Bannon some intellectual?
Well, he's a
thinker and historian.
He's called things pretty darn well.
I want to see him on Jeopardy first. I'm ready to say how good he is.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. He went to Harvard Business School, and he's done pretty well in the last 2 years.
By the theory of credentials, the establishment has just got it made in this country. Anyway, Michael, you're reporting on Yahoo News now that the FBI is investigating the Russian state-funded news outlet, propaganda organ Sputnik, to determine whether it is acting as an undeclared propaganda arm of the Kremlin in violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, a law intended to check foreign propaganda. The Bureau has interviewed, that's the FBI, a former White House correspondent for Sputnik, Andrew Feinberg, who says that his supervisors regularly would say, Moscow wants this or Moscow wants that. Feinberg says he was directed to raise questions in the White House briefing about a now discredited report that cast doubt on Russia's role in the DNC hacking, and also suggested Syria's Bashar Assad was not behind the chemical attack. So he was told by his bosses, go in there and propagandize in the White House press room. He said, no, they fired him. You know what this reminds me of? The Americans. It's like the center. It's like Moscow says, the center says, you know, and then Frank Langella comes in with the big news in that series, and it's always bad.
Look,
you've got this story. Tell me what the story's all about.
Well, first of all, this is significant because you have these two Russian news organizations in the United States, Sputnik and RT.
Yeah. Are they accredited anywhere, like up on the Hill or in the White House? Are they allowed in the door given press credentials? Or?
Well, Andrew Feinberg, the reporter who
he's an American?
Who is an American from the Washington suburbs, who was the White House reporter. So he had White House press credentials to go in there on behalf of Sputnik. Now, both Sputnik...
But he just sort of choked on this crap. He wouldn't do what they finally told him to do. Go in there and BS this thing and propaganda.
That's how, and he talked to Yahoo about it, how he was fired after he refused to ask that question about Seth Rich, that they wanted him to give circulation to this bogus conspiracy theory. And then he wrote a piece for Politico about it, and then it was after that the FBI reaches out to him, says they want to talk to him.
Well, is there any doubt that it seems like the FBI's got a simple one here. Is RT and is Sputnik a propaganda operation? Isn't the answer obviously yes?
Well, the U.S. intelligence community basically said that in its January report, saying that both RT and Sputnik played a role in the Russian influence campaign during the 2016 presidential election, that they were there to further Kremlin propaganda, to boost Donald Trump, to attack Hillary Clinton.
So they're already there.
They were doing
what's your news?
exactly.
What's your scoop then?
Well, the fact that the FBI is investigating this and trying to bring them under the orbit of the Foreign Agents Registration Act.
What's the fine if they catch? Was okay? You're just a bunch of propagandists.
Listen, it's a criminal offense. It's not often
can you put some Russians in jail?
But you could conceivably. But the more important thing is
that'd be exciting.
That they would. I
think a lot of people watching would like to see some of the Russians involved in screwing with our election, behind bars.
If I may make the point here, that what's significant,
you're not getting enough time here. Is that your problem, Michael? Make your point. Let's go.
What's significant here is that if you're covered under FARA, anything you disseminate, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, anything you disseminate has to be labeled as propaganda.
And the word
in every piece of information you put out.
Wouldn't that discredit every word you said if you said this is propaganda?
Exactly. If you're a news organization, you're presenting yourself as reporting news, and it would have to be labeled this is propaganda at the end of every story. I think it would undermine your credibility.
You can't say fair and balanced.
Yeah, right.
Well, anyway, last week the Washington Post revealed, reporting there, revealed that the Washington Russian firm bought but ads attacking or targeting American voters through fraudulent Facebook accounts. A report in the Daily Beast now estimates that those propaganda posts were likely seen by a minimum of 23 million people and might have reached as many as 70 million. Annie?
Yeah.
A lot of power out there in the propaganda operation.
I think this is one of the most insidious stories actually to come out in this entire sort of discussion about how Russia has influenced or sought to influence our election, because you wonder how in the world were those 20 million people targeted? And that is the question that we don't have answered yet, but that's where you begin to wonder if there's any sort of nexus at all between the Trump campaign or supporters of his campaign and information about where exactly those ads should go, because they didn't go randomly. I mean, I certainly didn't see any of those on my Facebook feed. I don't know many people who did, sort of in my immediate family and my network, which is sort of very truth-based. So you have to wonder, how did they get the targeting on that? And I think that is the key question.
But do we know what's in those ads yet? Do we know what's in those ads?
That's a very good point, because Facebook has refused to disclose them. They say they have to protect the privacy of its users. Now, its users in this case were fake account holders tied to a Russian troll agency, but they say they have to follow their rules.
Well, how is that private information if it's already been posted? I mean, how do you maintain the privacy of a client when you've already put out their propaganda as the relationship you have with them?
So it's waived. Of course, the Department of Justice has firm guidelines whenever there's a concern about infringing on the press because of the First Amendment. But at the end of the day, if Robert Mueller or some official of the Justice Department wants this information from Facebook, they will get it.
Well, on Friday, a reporter with the New York Times released a letter of intent between the Trump Organization and a Russian developer for a planned, catch this, Trump Tower in Moscow. It's the latest evidence that Trump was pursuing business deals in Russia during his campaign for president. Get it? He was pursuing business deals during the race for president, the campaign, despite his numerous public denials on the record that he has nothing to do with Russia. Let's watch those denials.
I have nothing to do with Russia, folks, okay?
I don't have any deals in Russia. I have no relationship to Russia whatsoever. I have nothing to do with Russia. I have no investments in Russia, none whatsoever. I have no dealings with Russia. I have no deals in Russia. I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we've stayed away.
The word liar is a cruel word, but there you have a guy saying I've had no business relations, and now we have documentary evidence of a proposal to build a Trump Tower in Moscow.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but you've got to say, is this the first time a politician has lied? I mean, it's not exactly against the law. He was not under oath in any of those circumstances.
But at least make it a lie about something. It's not illegal to have business in Russia. So when he lies about it, it sounds like a cover-up, like he's afraid of what the investigation.
If I'm a prosecutor like you have been, I would begin to think this guy's covering up because he instinctively covers up. You say business in Russia, why would he deny it?
Yeah, again, there's no reason.
If it's a document sitting out there, if he's trying to build a building over there, a big one, a real big building like Trump likes to, why would he lie? But now to the Russian investigation into what former White House strategist Steve Bannon is now saying. Just weeks after he was ousted, Bannon is reigniting the debate over President Trump's firing of former FBI Director James Comey, a subject the White House has tried to avoid amid the obstruction of justice investigation into the president. Bannon said on 60 Minutes that Trump's decision to cut Comey loose was the biggest mistake in modern political history. Let's listen.
I don't think there's any doubt that if James Comey had not been fired, we would not have a special counsel.
Someone said to me that you described the firing of James Comey, you're a student of history, as the biggest mistake in political history.
That would probably be too bombastic even for me, but maybe modern political history.
So the firing of James Comey was the biggest mistake in modern political history.
If you're saying that that's associated with me, then I'll leave it at that.
Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. We've got news tonight on the recent developments in the Russian investigation, as well as Steve Bannon's remarks about the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. But first, just a word on Hurricane Irma. It has left a trail of destruction across much of the state of Florida, as we know, triggering severe flooding now in Jacksonville, Florida, the state's largest city. More than 7 million homes and businesses are without power tonight across the southeast. And officials are going house to house now in the Florida Keys, which took the brunt of the hit as the storm first made landfall. Here's what it looked like here on MSNBC when the big storm moved through.
This is the rain that's, wow, hitting me. Wow.
Okay, Gabe, why don't you get under the overhang?
This came off one of the palm trees to the east of me, and I'm not going to let go of it because it actually could just fly around. It probably weighs about 25, 30 pounds.
The angle of approach can make all the difference. And a storm that's more parallel. Oh. That hurt.
That hurts. We'll get the latest on Irma now, a tropical storm ahead on Hardball.